Why everything has to be so dark? And please don't tell me this is one of those games infested with annoying jump scares. And what the heck are those sounds? You should have seen your face when I scared the piss out of you. Yeah, maybe a little too literary. You almost scared me to death, you dinglebutt. Oh, come on. Let me have some fun. Besides, it is not my fault that you are such a cowardly little nerd bunny. Oh, and making those regenerator noises is not going to work on me. Unlike you, I don't fall for such a cheap trick. What do you mean? I am not doing anything. Please, it is obvious that you Hey guys, we are once again in the spooky month of October. So just like last year, I will be reviewing a few horror-themed games. Previously I did the original Resident Evil 4, and just like I said, now I will review the remake and compare them both. If you remember, last time I said that the original Resident Evil 4 was a legendary game. And not just probably the best game in the entire Resident Evil franchise, but also one of the best third-person shooters ever! And I still stand by that. So it is quite obvious that this remake had really high expectations. So it is time to figure out if they really managed to live up to all that hype. And just like last time, Dexter the Nerd Bunny will be the one helping me to do this review. Yes, and once again, I will let everyone be amazed by being in close proximity of my infinitely superior intellect. And as always, I will have to do all the hard work while you just say dumb stuff like the stupid dude bro you are. Whatever. You guys already know him. So enough with the time-wasting introductions and let's just start already. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get going. Let's start with the story, since that's an aspect that has been a big point of discussion. And before anyone says, "But the story is already great, it doesn't need to be changed," you will have to confront a real fact about the story of the original game. It was really dumb. And I don't mean dumb in the sense it was campy. I mean dumb in the sense that it was filled with plot holes and contrivances. The story of the original was carried entirely by its entertaining chapters and overall cheesy campy tone. So obviously there has always been plenty of room for improvements. Though to be fair, it worked very well as a game plot, because it was an excuse to go to Spain and fight plenty of parasitic creatures and have fun with the gameplay. So I can see why making changes could remove some really good section that people like it a lot. But we will talk about that later. And as for the story of this remake, just like most things in this game, it is either very similar to the original or completely different. Like when you find Ashley for the first time. Instead of Lord Sadler being there and telling them his plans like an absolute moron, here you just see a glimpse of him using his mind controlling powers on the Ganados. Because since Leon and Ashley have already been infected, they can hear his orders inside their minds. But his influence is still not strong enough to take control over them. It is very unnerving, and it gives Sadler a much more scary aura that the silly Saturday morning cartoon villain of the original did not have at all. This is a good example that this game clearly wants to be less campy. Instead it tries to be more realistic and scary compared to the original. so it fits better with the tone of most of the other Resident Evil games. Sometimes it's for the better, like we just saw here, and sometimes it is for the worst. But we will go into more detail about that later. Now let's talk about the characters, starting with Leon S. Kennedy. Many people were worried that with the more serious tone of this remake, that all of Leon's one-liners will be removed. But even though a few of them were taken out, a lot of the more iconic ones are still there.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
And to make out for the ones that were removed, there's plenty of new ones that were added that in my opinion are just as good.
I'll let myself out.
But despite that, it is true that Leon is a far more serious character than in the original. You can tell he's not that silly action movie hero anymore. Instead, he feels far more like a real human that has been deeply affected by the tragic events in Raccoon City, and wants to avoid something like that ever happening in anywhere else, which gives a far better continuity to the series. Also, I don't think that being more serious is a bad thing in this case. It is just what fits better with the tone this remake is going for, which, like I said before, is having more consistent tone with the previous Resident Evil games. But don't think that he's just a sad movie character the whole time. He still has plenty of fun badass moments. You can tell he progressively gets more and more annoyed with the constant crazy stuff that keeps happening to them. And near the end of the castle, he's so done with everything that he can't even tolerate listening to Ramon's constantly spewing bullshit and just shoots him.
You talk too much.
Failed! You vulgar, utterly uncivilized mongrel!
Ashley. In this game they made her a much better character. Not only she has a far superior voice actress that doesn't sound like an annoying spoiled brat, but you can tell that she's being heavily affected by the events of all the madness happening around her, and even though she's never been in a situation of such adversity before, she slowly gains bravery and manages to survive all the chaos. Which, yeah, it is what they were kind of trying to do in the original, but here it is all done much better. It is simple details like her hesitating jumping to be catched by Leon for the first time, showing that she doesn't trust him at first, but realizes that this guy will do anything to bring her home safe. To moments where she gets more brave and takes action doing something useful. But that's in range of her capabilities, like after the boss fight with Mendes. In the original, just a few pieces of wood conveniently fall off, leaving Leon an obvious exit. In the remake, Ashley breaks the window to help Leon escape from the burning house. These little details might not seem like they make much of a difference, but they absolutely do and make her character far more compelling, while keeping her as the lady that needs to be rescued without the need to turn her into an annoying modern bland action movie girl boss, Luis Serra. As much as I like Luis in the original and both are great in their own way, I am going to say that Luis is better in the remake, mostly because he has far more screen time and dialogue. We get to see him a lot more, and that allows us to fall in love with his charismatic personality until we have to see his eventual and inevitable demise. Though I still miss this line from the original.
I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics too.
How rude!
But hey, New Luis also has really fun moments.
Then come, Sancho Panza! Let us rescue the Princess Dulcinea!
You're gonna hurt yourself.
Hey, that was my dance.
His story feels more complete now that he helps you a lot more in the story and in the gameplay, since you fight alongside him in far more sections, including the two Gigantes battle and the minecart section, while he reveals how much he was involved in the whole thing, and now he's seeking redemption by helping you take down Sadler. Also, this time his death is acknowledged instead of just walking over his corpse without even mentioning him.
Can you stand?
Where's Luis?
He was worried about you. Until the end. Come on. We don't have much time. Let's get rid of these things.
For Luis.
Ada Wong.
Hey.
I do.
This is the only one that's clearly a downgrade in every way possible.
Fortunately, it's not on me.
Not only they make her far less confident, funny,
What a good
and
job.
flirty than in the original, but her role in the story feels far more forced. All the other characters got a lot more development and purpose, but Ada just seems to be here out of obligation that she was in the original. It doesn't help that her new voice actress is... I know this might sound mean. Let's be honest.
Something else I need to get to.
She's awful, and far worse than the original or any other previous version of Ada for that matter. She talks to Leon like she's bored out of her mind. She's like a charisma vacuum. And that's just a super mega epic fail from Capcom. I have heard even AI voices that can give a performance with far more personality than whatever this is.
Your friend to the top of the clock tower. If you hurry, you might get there before she turns into one of them.
So you aren't heartless after all. I guess I should be thankful?
Yeah, you should.
So it is no surprise that one of the most popular mods for the Separate Ways DLC, it is the one where the voice of the new actress is replaced by someone else that not only does a much better performance, but that also sounds a lot more like the actress from the Resident Evil 2 remake. Mendes. Before he was a very simple brute guy, but this time around he's a far more devout follower of Los Iluminados religion, almost like a priest that takes care of the town, which makes him a far more interesting villain than in the original. He even prays to his god to give him strength to defeat his current enemy. They also play up a lot more his invulnerable monster aspect by making you encounter him right before his boss battle. He also no longer has that weird ability to somehow sneak behind Leon without being hurt, and Leon no longer tries to kick him like a moron. Instead, now he shoots him, but he tanks the pistol shots, which really makes him feel more powerful. Ramon Salazar. If Ada was the one character that was clearly a downgrade from the good guy's side, then Ramon is that equivalent from the bad guy's side. Though he's not nearly as bad as Ada, since he's mostly worse because of his really strange old lady-like redesign, instead of the iconic short demon kid Napoleon look, and the fact that in this game there is never that moment where he hacks your communicator, because you know this game wants to be more realistic. Which means that he has far less lines, screen time and interactions with Leon throughout the castle. And it also means this legendary moment is now gone!
I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your right hand comes off?
Say whatever you please. Die, you worm!
That's it! The whole game is ruined! I give it a minus 20 out of 10. But in all seriousness, even though his new voice actor does a good job doing an impression of the original, he's far more restrained with the campiness and humor that made the original so entertaining. I guess that's because they wanted you to take him more seriously. But these nincompoops at Capcom don't seem to understand that it is hard to do that when he still has that silly voice and his new design is not creepy at all. If anything, it looks somehow more dumb than the short guy with the Napoleon hat.
Just stay close.
Krauser. This version of him has a lot more character development, because we get to read a lot of his journals, and with that now we understand more about his motivations, about his need for revenge to the USA government, and his new desire for power! Though his new voice is clearly better in the acting department, he doesn't sound nearly as intimidating. Before he sounded and talked like a very angry drill sergeant that could knock you out with a single punch. The new one sounds like a low-level soldier trained too hard. And maybe that's the point. But I can help to like more the original in that aspect. I also like that now Krauser is the guy who gets to kill Luis. Talked by Robin Sadler from that feat, they kind of make it so there is less of a personal reason to kill him in the final battle. Lord Sadler! In this game they really wanted to build up to his first encounter with the good guys by showing glimpses of him in visions from his mind control, and it really makes him far more intimidating as a main antagonist. Ugh, I never thought I would find this guy scary, given how silly the original version was. And just like I mentioned before, the first time you find Ashley in the church, there is far more emphasis on the religious cult aspect of the character, which I really like. In the original, he never seemed to truly believe in the religion of Los Iluminados and was only using it to control people. Now there is no doubt that he truly believes in it, which in my opinion makes him a far more interesting character. Way too often in media the cultist group leader is portrayed as a guy who doesn't really believe in the stuff he's preaching, because a really easy way to show that a cult is bullshit is by revealing that the leader doesn't believe in it. So it has become a very overused cliché. Though sadly the first time Leon and Ashley get to see him in person, he does something so stupid that even Sadler from the original would have been embarrassed. He mind controls them immediately, then he orders Ashley to kill Leon with his own gun, and after she barely manages to resist the mind control enough to avoid shooting him, Sadler just goes away with Ashley and just leaves Leon there. Well, at least this is the only part where Sadler does something stupid in this game. Luckily, the rest of the time, he's a far more competent villain than in the original. Anyways, enough about the story. Let's move into what really matters in a game like this: the gameplay. But the big question is, it is better than the original? Well, let's find out. And the first thing that you will notice as soon as you start the game and take control over Leon is that he no longer moves like a tank. They got rid of the tank controls, which is one of the things they asked for this remake. But that alone does not automatically mean this remake is objectively better than the original. I mean, yeah, tank controls limit your movement in some ways. That's why a lot of people say they feel clunky, but all games limit you in some way. Every game where you can't fly also limits you with gravity itself. And 2D games also limit your movement in comparison to a 3D game. You also have a button to dock, which is another thing that I wanted for the remake. Now you no longer have to avoid some attacks with quick time events, and instead you just dock at any time you want for as long as you want. But you can't aim while docking for some reason, which could have been useful many times. Also, you still can't roll out of the way like in Uncharted, which is something I would have liked. But I think it is because they don't want to give you too many mobility options, since they wanted to scale up the horror factor for this remake so it is more similar to a traditional Resident Evil game. Though the game has added many animations to make Leon's movements feel more realistic, which kind of makes it a little bit more clunky and less responsive than the original in some aspects. Not that this game is not responsive at all. It is amazing how the game manages to have so many great animations and still feel as good as it is. I mean, the best games that try to immerse you in their world always manage to get a good balance of having good and clear animations while also being responsive. But with so many stumble animations after getting hit with anything, or animations after doing every action, especially when you are a low health and you have to move very slowly, it makes your actions take more time, and that gives more opportunities for the enemies to hit you. And if you thought that adding more freedom of movement in this game will make it easier, then you are wrong, because even the ganados have more mobility options as well. They are a lot faster and stronger. Also, just like in the old game, you can get stun locked into enemy attack combos. But since the enemies are more aggressive, it happens a lot more often. But before we continue, here is one of the main reasons that, while I love this remake, and it surpasses the original in many ways, it is overall not as good, and that's because it is far more unreliable, random, and not as responsive. They can mention it with Leon's more realistic animations. But you're probably wondering, what the hell do I mean by unreliable and random? Let me explain. Let's start with the reactions that the ganados have to your shots. In the original, you could always count on the same reaction from the ganados when you attacked them in a certain way. Like I mentioned in my review of the original, if you shoot them in the face, they will get staggered, so you can shoot them again or use a kick. Shoot them in the leg and they will go in their knees, so you can do an awesome suplex. It is such a classic. I never get tired of seeing it. Or if they have a weapon, they will drop it if you shoot them in their hand holding that weapon. The only times those things won't happen is if the ganado doesn't have enough health to survive the damage of that shot. But in the remake it is not like that at all. Because in this game, if you shoot a regular ganado in the face, sometimes it will get staggered, so you can do a kick. Though notice how I said sometimes, because other times the ganado might feel the shot but won't get staggered. Other times it might not even react at all, as if that shot was nothing. And consistently getting a stagger for a chance to do a kick is very important, since that's a very useful move that can get many enemies out of the way. It can save your life many times. See what I meant by unreliable and random? But now you're probably thinking, Dogo, who cares? Sure, it is annoying that sometimes the most basic enemies don't react to your attacks accordingly and tank shots to the face, but there is just as much of a chance that they might die in one shot with a critical hit. So that makes up for it. And yeah, that's true. But what you don't understand is that it will be far better if the game was more consistent with that kind of stuff. Because the more the game relies on luck for you to succeed, rather than your own skill, the more the game will be more unfair. Which is not a good thing, in case you didn't know. Sure, most action games with some good level of challenge like this will have some level of unfairness and randomness. The original Resident Evil 4 had random elements to some degree as well. Like some of the mutations of the ganados will randomly happen to some enemies, and the critical hits from your guns. But these were some nicely put curves the game would randomly throw at you, so it was not too predictable, therefore making it more interesting, fun and challenging. but the remake has too many of these. It feels like just a cheap way to artificially make the game harder, but also far more unfair and frustrating. And if you think that's the only time that this game is random like that, well, let me tell you that unfortunately, it is not. And one of the things that got affected by that were the guns. No! Yep. Sadly, another good example of trying to make the game harder by making it more unreliable is how you don't have a laser sight on all your weapons by default. Ugh. This one really bothers me because I know that it might be more realistic, but if you watched my review of the original, you will know how useful those laser sights were for aiming. Now you just have to hope to get lucky when using the crosshair. This is especially frustrating with weapons with a huge bloom, which, in case you don't know, that's the amount of space a crosshair has depending on their weapon's accuracy. And with some of them is absurd! I mean, just look at the size of the bloom effect on the TPM. And remember, the bigger the bloom is, the more you will have to rely on luck to actually hit what you are aiming at, because it increases the amount of random bullet deviation, making those weapons far more unreliable. Also, just like in many modern games, the more you shoot a weapon, the more the bloom spread will grow, which is the opposite of what happens in real life. If anything, the more you shoot without stopping, the more accurate you will be, since your arms will get more used to the weapon's kick of the recoil. Luckily, you can still get the stock for this weapon to make it more accurate. But sadly, that's not the case for the broken butterfly. Its bloom effect is way too big. It almost completely ruins this gun. And since its ammo is hard to come by, and it costs a lot of resources to craft, you can't afford to miss shots. So you will have to shoot only enemies that are close to you, so even with that huge bloom you still don't miss the target. But hey, at least that reload animation is still very satisfying to watch. Yay! Anyways, just get the Killer 7 instead. It does only slightly less damage, it has far better accuracy, and it comes with a built-in laser sight. Now you have a crafting system and a storage just like in the other Resident Evil games. Though for some reason you can only put guns in your storage. But the fact that now you have to craft your ammo means that now if you want ammo for your best weapons, you better find some gunpowder to make it yourself, because they are not going to appear very often as item pickups from the enemies. Your knife is a lot more useful. For example, you can use it to get out of an enemy's grip, which is nice, but what's even better is that now you can parry some enemy attacks as if you're playing freaking Metal Gear Rising!
Stop that blade!
But all of this sounds too good to be true. So of course there has to be a downside to this. And it is that now your knife can break once its durability runs out. And you will have to repair it every once in a while. And it always seems to break when you need it the most. Urgh! It gives me Zelda Breath of the Wild flashbacks. Because you can end up getting out of supplies. In the original, no matter how low you were on ammo, you always had your trusty indestructible knife to rely on. But now Leon can end up having 0 ways to fight back. But hey, I hope it's not lost yet. We can't talk about the Resident Evil guns without mentioning the shotguns, let alone if it is a Resident Evil 4 remake. Yeah, this gun was so powerful in the original. Boom, baby! And in this remake the shotgun is... pretty disappointing, to be honest. Now your shotgun has been incredibly nerfed. It is no longer OP boomstick. Ugh. Resident Evil is a franchise about killing zombies. Of course shotguns shall be OP. The best example of this is how in the original the shotguns were the best choice to keep enemies with chainsaws away from you. But now, Dr. Salvador gets a shot in the face with a freaking shotgun and shrugs it off like it is nothing. And don't give me that crap of, we want this game to be realistic, when there is tons of absurd parasitic monstrosities running around. Or even that now you can parry a freaking chainsaw with a tiny knife. But not everything is for the worse. There is a new weapon called the Bolt Thrower that I like a lot. At first it seems very useless because it is clunky, reloads very slowly, doesn't do much damage, and it doesn't even have much range either. But what makes this weapon special is that you can recover and reuse its bolts, as long as they fall in a place that you can reach, of course. Which means this weapon very rarely gets out of ammo. Use it when you are low in resources. Which, trust me, with the new crafting system it is going to happen far more often. And also when you don't want to waste the ammo of the better weapons on weak enemies. However, that might still not be enough to make this weapon worth putting in your arsenal. But wait! There is more! You can also craft some very powerful attachable mines to put off the bolts. So that way you can go full Turok or Rambo using explosive arrows. Though obviously the explosion of the mine destroys the bolt, so that way you can't get it back after using it. Speaking about the guns, the merchant is obviously back, and now he has far more side mission for you to complete. Because before, aside from selling you treasure and destroying a few medallions, he didn't really give you that much side missions. But now you can do some jobs for him. These are the merchant requests that you can do at any moment once they are available. But of course, all of them are not available all the time, since there are many times that you can't go to a previous area, sometimes making it so you can't finish that request. Not only the medallions are back in a lot of other areas, but you can also do some pest control for him by killing some rats and hunting a few vipers, or you can also destroy a few emblems on some tombstones. But my favorite has to be the disgrace of Salazar's family. The merchant really dislikes Ramon, so of course he wants you to deface one of his portraits in their throne room, and you do that by throwing a chicken egg into it. Also don't worry, you don't have to keep an egg from the village and bring it all the way over here, since there are some convenient chickens right there in the throne room. So just wait for one of them to hatch an egg, and then the rest is easy. He will reward you for completing this with some spinels. But unlike in the original where you can only use them to sell them for more money, here you can use them to trade them for some special items that you can't buy from him. Like some gunpowder, treasure maps, some exclusive guns, and some other attachments for your weapons, like stocks for the Red 9 and the TPM, a high-powered scope, and even a laser sight. Oh, now it feels a little more like the original. Though only a few weapons can have the laser sight attachment, for some reason. And you still can't buy ammo from him. Though at least now you can buy resources from him that can be used to craft ammo and other stuff. So that's the closest you can get to that. Also now the mechanic of inlaying different gems into the treasures to increase their value is far more detailed since now you have to match the different colors, and different combinations can greatly increase the money you can get by selling them. It is a pretty fun minigame, to be honest, and it adds a small level of strategy to how you use the gems you find in the game. The shooting galleries also make a return, and this time they are far more detailed in the presentation and the variety of challenges they give you. Also, since it is part Ultimate, now it makes more sense in universe than in the original. But also it is really satisfying to hear the merchant hyping you up as you keep doing successful shots. Or Luis as well. Even Ashley becomes your personal cheerleader as you do this, depending in which part of the story you're currently in. They will even do different comments depending if you win or lose. It really makes you feel like these characters are part of your journey all the way. Not just when they're being attacked by the enemy, but also when they get to share the moments of levity or relief in the gameplay. Now you no longer need to do a headshot to the target to get its maximum amount of score. Instead, what will require more skills will be the skulls. So, since these require a lot of good aiming, here is another moment where that laser sight will have been incredibly useful, especially when you have to do the more frustrating shooting galleries in which you have to use the weapons with the accuracy that's far worse. Ugh. You basically have to rely on luck to get the best scores when using the shotguns or the TPM. But that's not all. Sometimes they had the skulls behind the barrels of the pirates that are doing a peek. So if you want to get them all, you will have to shoot all those damn barrels to make sure you didn't miss any of them. So basically, it punishes you for doing successful headshots on the barrel enemies. And because of these issues, I say that even though these shooting ranges look far better visually, and they are clearly a far more ambitious minigame than in the original, they are far more frustrating and is overall a step back. Which is a shame because now you are far more encouraged to do them, since this time your reward for completing them are the silver and gold tokens, which can be exchanged in a vending machine for a charm that will give you some extra stat increases like 8% more running speed for Leon, or getting 50% more health for using a green herb. You can equip up to 3 of them at the same time, but my main complaint here is that the charms are given to you randomly. I mean, sure, you can increase your chances of getting a better charm by putting more golden tokens into it, but that's all you can really do. At the end of the day, it's still random. It is really annoying that you spent a lot of time and effort getting those tokens, to then just get unlucky in the vending machine with really bad charms as your reward. Besides, some of these charms can be very OP, like getting 100% recovery from the black bass fish. They can make a huge difference in your playthrough, so it is really annoying that they have to be random. So I wonder why they decided to make it this way. Isn't it obvious? So you can get super frustrated and decide to spend real money on the best ones. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. This game has microtransactions for a single player game, and not only the best charms can be bought with real money, but you can also buy a ticket that gives you the special upgrade for a weapon. And this can be super OP. So yeah, the Resident Evil games are now pay to win. Damn it, Capcom! Maybe we should move on to something less negative before you explode into a furious rampage of infinite anger again. Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about other elements of the game, like the puzzles. Given how annoyingly easy are the puzzles in most modern AAA games, I was expecting this to be so dumbed down that they will be an insult to my intelligence. And also with a character constantly and annoyingly yelling you the answer of the puzzle before even a minute has passed, as if the player suffers from brain damage! Yeah, not to mention that even the puzzles of the original were not that difficult. But I have to say that I am very pleasantly surprised that the puzzles in this game are quite challenging. Now they finally live up to the quality of the rest of the classic Resident Evil franchise. Yeah, and after playing the game in higher difficulty levels, I noticed that some puzzles actually changed to be more difficult. That's just going an extra mile that most developers don't even bother to do. So great job on this, Capcom! But before we continue, I would like to mention the music, as this was not the strongest points in the original. But in this one the music is far better. The remixes of the old themes are very good and more memorable. Even the new stuff is amazing too. I remember that in the original, in the battle with the two gigantes, you could barely hear the music. Most of it was drowned by the sound effects, and the few times you could hear anything, it sounded very generic. The new version is far superior at sounding more epic and fitting for the battles, but also sounding more unique. It is also worth mentioning the graphics, which are absolutely spectacular. Capcom once again did a fantastic job with the re-engine. This is a very impressive technological achievement. And that's really saying something, because with how good games are getting and rendering in-game stuff, it is very rare that a game surprises me with its graphics these days. Maybe not nearly as much as the original did when it first came out, but it still is very impressive. But what is this weird delusion that I've been hearing about this game not being as violent as gory as the original? If anything, the gore is far more intense and realistic. When doing headshots, you see plenty of blood and flesh chunks being splattered all over the place, instead of the original where the head just breaks into a few low poly pieces with a cartoony blood burst.
Finish him! Fatality!
I guess people just like the narrative that most games are not as violent as they used to be. And yeah, that might be true for most cases, but that's definitively not the case for some modern games like the Resident Evil remakes, the new Doom games, and the new Mortal Kombat games. That last one is so realistic at this point that it can be quite gross to look at. Ew. If anything, those are far more violent than they ever were before. Though I partly understand what they mean, because some game over deaths are gone. Like the one where Leon gets his face melted by some acid and you can see part of his skull. But there is a few new ones to make up for it. Like the one where one of the ganados gouges Leon's eyes out in very gory detail. Also, when you shoot an enemy in the arms, they fall off. Same happens if you parry a punch from them. Speaking about the gore, another big difference in the direction from the original is that Las Plagas are now front and center. What do I mean by that? Well, before it was a plot twist when you found out about it, by seeing the first Plaga mutation in front of you. Because until that point you could have easily assumed they were just mind-controlled humans. But now, when you blow an arm from a ganado, you can clearly see various parasitic tendrils moving around on what's left of the destroyed limb, and I really like that, because it is really interesting seeing how this parasite affects the bodies that infects, and same happens when you blow their head off. It is fascinating but also very nasty! But there is not just changes that come from the improved graphics. There is also a lot of drastic changes in the art direction. Like for example, the village now looks far more rustic and dirty, while the castle is far more darker and with plenty of new scary stuff, clearly focusing more in the horror aspect of the game. Some enemies and sub-bosses like the Gigantes and Los Garrados look very different than the original. almost like they're trying to make them look more brutal and intimidating. In fact, a lot of characters look either very similar or completely different to the OG counterparts. Oh, I see we have been going for a good while now. So I guess this is a nice point to end this part. In the next one we're going to talk about the new sections that have been added, the enemies, the bosses, and much more. Just when we were getting into the groove of things. But I am going to be ready for the next part, because that's when the game gets a lot creepier. And I am going to have so much fun seeing you dealing with that. Anyways, that's all for today. See you later, guys.